and good evening, everyone. I'm Paul Mako, Chair of the Holy Trinity's History Committee, and your Master of Ceremonies for tonight. As you filed into your seats this evening, you of course were serenaded by the Jazz Combo Trio, which Lamar just introduced you to. You'll hear them again later, as well as from two extraordinary singers, Layla Bunch and Shania Nicole. And of course, our speaker for tonight, Professor Maurice Jackson of Georgetown University, author of Rhythms of Resistance and Resilience, How Black Washingtonians Use Music and Sports in the Fight for Equality. But it is time for us to begin, so please allow me to introduce our pastor, Father Kevin Gillespie, who will open our gathering with a welcome and an invocation. Father Kevin.
Thank you, Paul, and thank each of you for coming here on this cold February evening to get experience of the warmth of music, the warmth of intellectual writing, and a way of bringing us together as a community. It is a sense of friendship that encourages us to, if you will, take the risks of art, but also the risks at times of resistance that we'll hear from Professor Jackson. It is part of our commemoration at Holy Trinity Parish of Black History Month. We welcome Professor Maurice Jackson of Georgetown, who teaches history, African American studies, and music. He's a true Renaissance man. We also welcome, of course, a number of these wonderful, talented students, performers from Duke Ellington School. And we enjoy your giving us that spirit, preparing for tonight's program. We thank these guests, as well as Holy Trinity's Social Justice Ministry Team. Many of you are here. The faculty and staff, of course, of Duke Ellington School, Middleburg Books, who are selling the professor's books, and the Citizens Association of Georgetown for making tonight's event possible. Before we begin, then let us pray. Let's pause. Bow our heads. O Heavenly Father, as we are gathered here tonight in friendship and community, taking a moment out of our busy lives to learn, share, and reflect on the insights, experiences, and wisdom of others, we are reminded how blessed we all are. In the current world around us, there are many who suffer and face grave challenges, and we stand in solidarity with them, in compassion, and by practicing loving kindness to ourselves and all those around us. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Father Kevin. And now I would like to introduce Neville Waters of the Citizens Association of Georgetown, our co-sponsor for our gathering tonight, and so many past gatherings that we've had during Black History Month. We are so delighted to be working together again, as well as with the Duke Ellington School. Neville?
Thank you, Paul. Indeed, I'm here to speak on behalf of the Citizens Association of Georgetown, but I would be remiss if I don't take the opportunity to share just a brief personal thoughts. I am a fifth generation resident of Georgetown, and I currently live in a home that my grandfather bought in 1927 for the grand total of $3,000. And his advice to me was, don't sell the house. I guess I followed along his advice, and in 2027 will mark 100 years. And so I am quite proud of that. Although if he came back and saw what they were offering for these houses now, we've made our money. But part of it is just the fact that living here, I really do feel very much like it is a village and like I am a member of the community, and so I'm proud of that. I also serve as the head of the Mount Zion Female Union Band Society Cemetery that is located at 27th and Q Street, and we've been working to preserve it and encourage the use of it as a place for meditation and reflection and education. The thousands of both Black and white people buried there have deep histories and legacies as it pertains to the building not only of our village, but the city and the country as a whole. So I am also very proud of that. I also would like to say, as I say, on behalf of the Citizens Association of Georgetown, I'm honored that they asked me to speak tonight. It is an organization that certainly has made a commitment to the history of this village, and I also think that the church here should be commended. Although I'm not a member, you will find my grandmother's narrative on the separation of Blacks from here to the founding of Epiphany. And I've always been so impressed by the fact that Holy Trinity has acknowledged their past, has been very honest about it, and has used it as a tool of education and awareness. And particularly nowadays where there is such an assault on the truth and an attempt to whitewash the history, I think that, again, Holy Trinity should be commended for their commitment. Because while this event is a culmination, it is not the only thing they do, and they have shown a willingness to do the work. So please support the Citizens Association as well. You can visit them on their website at cagtown.org. So I've done my plug for them. So again, I just want to welcome everyone. Thank you very much. I know Professor Jackson from my alma mater at Georgetown is going to give you some great inspiration and good words this evening. So without any further ado, let me get out the way. But again, thank you for coming tonight. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, Neville. Our gathering tonight is part of Holy Trinity's celebration of Black History Month. As we gather together as a community to learn more about our history and of the extraordinary contribution to our community made by its Black members. This is the third year in a row that the Citizens Association has joined with us to celebrate Black History Month, and the second year in a row in which our neighbor, Duke Ellington School of the Arts, has joined to share with us the talents of Duke Ellington's extraordinary students. And of course, this year we are very fortunate to have with us Professor Maurice Jackson of Georgetown. The title of Dr. Jackson's new book, Rhythms of Resistance and Resilience, How Black Washingtonians Used Music and Sports in the Fight for Equality, about which he will speak, is also the theme of our gathering tonight. Building community is important to us. Our human nature is to yearn for community. And so, as this evening progresses, may all here begin to feel a greater sense of community. Please enjoy our gathering. Listen, learn, and let your heart soar. Now let us begin our program. I invite Lamar Fun, the Associate Director of Development and Community Engagement of the Duke Ellington School of Arts, to introduce a few of our performers tonight. Lamar.
It is always an honor and a pleasure to join Holy Trinity in so many of the things that they sponsor to make this community and our world a better place. Our students here at Duke Ellington School of the Arts, I want to first thank you for allowing us to participate in this through our principal, Principal Sandy Logan, who is our visionary and is in her office right now working tirelessly as throughout the Washington diaspora, we are experiencing a lot of cuts in the arts. So please, please pray for us, pray for our teachers and our staff. Many of our staff members are alumni of Duke Ellington, class of 1974. Our teachers and staff members are of the first graduating class. So that is heavy on my heart. I'm asking you for your prayers for us. But I'm grateful that Father Kevin has invited us to be a part of this celebration of Black history, as there is a great erasure of African American history and culture happening. So we are grateful to be amongst friends who want to continue the preservation of African American history and culture, which is American history and culture. A couple of plugs. I want you to come back on February the 28th to Holy Trinity for the vocal department concert. You will not leave without having your heart soared. You will definitely clap, you might dance a little in your seat, and you might even cry. If you're me, I cry every single performance. You might catch me crying today. We have that, and we also have our February 22nd, the 50th anniversary celebration of Duke Ellington School of the Arts, which was erected by Peggy Cooper Cafritz and Mike Malone in 1974. So we are still in the celebration of that 50th year. And if you hit this QR code on either one of these, Holy Trinity, with the permission of Father Kevin and the help of Ashley Click and Matthew and Anthony Vargas, they are helping us to raise money to help protect the arts for our students. So please, 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 share this with your friends. Take a picture of it so that we can help to keep our teachers and our staff. And we are also looking to get our students abroad as Holy Trinity, Duke Ellington, and the French Embassy are in partnership to assist our students in going abroad to amazing situation. And they will, I have to share this specifically, they have an appointment to sing and have a master class with the Notre Dame choir. So we want that to come to fruition, as well as the Paris Opera. And the students don't know about that just yet, but we're raising money, so who you're seeing here will be able to go. And the French Embassy has already made those appointments happen for us, so now we just have to get there. So your supporting us will help that effort. And I also want you to buy this book by Mr. Maurice Jackson. And you have Duke Ellington right here on the front. And Principal Sandy Logan, as this says, Rhythms of Resistance and Resilience, we have an entire month which she has dedicated to Art is Activism. So it is through the students cultivating of their art forms, whereby they use that to express and to have healing through the arts. as well as to really perfect their art by there being a month long where we celebrate with the community and the school. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our first artist, Sanai Nicole, who will be performing with us. Sanai is 17 years old. You can walk up, sweetheart. Give you your flowers. So I'll read both of their bios and they're going to do a duet. So Sanai Nicole is a 17-year-old vocalist and musician from Northern Virginia, and she attends Duke Ellington School of the Arts as a senior. And with over 10 years of experience in music, dance, and acting, she is also a skilled pianist. Since launching her musical career in 2022, she has co-written over 30 original songs. In June of 2024, she earned a scholarship with the B4 program at Berklee College of Music in Boston, Massachusetts. And she won the 2024 Young Master for Music competition with the Links Incorporated. You'll be clapping all day. And Sanai has also won gold in both vocal, classical music, contemporary categories before competing in a national competition in Las Vegas in July 2024. She has participated in the Washington National Opera Summer Institute at the Kennedy Center, and as a member of the Duke Ellington Concert Choir, she has performed at the White House and throughout the country. You can find her music on all streaming platforms, IG, TikTok, Spotify, Apple Music, Facebook. Very good, Sanai. This is Sanai Nicole. Her fans are with us, and we have next Miss Beautiful Layla Rochelle Bunch. Raise your hand, Layla. Layla is in her junior year of Duke Ellington in the graduating class of 2026. Layla is a very talented dancer and actress, having appeared in the television series Orange is the New Black and others. She is also a lauded vocalist, whereby I had the honor of accompanying her to a master class with the illustrious Denise Graves at the Peabody Institute in Baltimore just last Thursday. She is the winner of the Virginia E. Williams Opera Prize, which is an award of $25,000, which will provide for her vocal training in Italy this summer. This prestigious award is one of the highest honors given to a Duke Ellington School of the Arts student, and she is also the youngest to have received this award. You may have seen her perform at Blues Alley or at the White House for multiple presidents. Without further ado, I present to you Sanai Nicole and Layla Rochelle. Please stand as we sing Lift Every Voice and sing. Lift every voice and sing to earth and heaven. you, everyone. Again, my name is... Very good. My name is Sanai Nicole, and tonight I will be singing Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday. Southern trees bear a strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root, black bodies swinging in the southern breeze. Here's a strange fruit from the poplar tree. Pastoral scene of the gallant South, the bulging eyes and the twisted mouth. Here is a food from the bitter South, and the bitter smell of the flesh. Here is a fruit for the crows to pluck, for the rain to gather, for the wind to suck, for the sun to rise, for the tears to dry. Here is a strange and bitter cry. Thank you. Well, that's going to be a hard one to follow. Hi, everyone. As you heard, my name is Layla Bunch, or Layla Rochelle Bunch, and I will be singing Deep River by H.T. Burley. Jordan.
I have the pleasure of introducing you to Professor Maurice Jackson of Georgetown University. He teaches in the History and African American Studies Department and is affiliated professor of music and jazz at Georgetown. He's the author of Let This Voice Be Heard and co-editor of African Americans and the Haitian Revolution and DC Jazz. He was the inaugural chair of the Washington, D.C. Commission on African American Affairs. He's had a remarkable life. Before academia, as a longshoreman, shipyard rigger, construction worker, and community organizer. He's written the liner notes to the 2 jazz CDs by Charlie Hayden and Hank Jones, Steal Away, Spirituals, Folk Songs, and Hymns, and Come Sunday. He's recently lectured in France, Turkey, Italy, Puerto Rico, and Qatar. He served on Georgetown University's Slavery Working Group, and I could continue, but you came to hear him, not listen to me. Please welcome Dr. Maurice.
Thank you all for coming out. Thank you, Father Gillespie. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Shanae and Layla. Thank you, members of the Duke Ellington combo. And thank you all for coming. If I could just ask 1 minute, if you all would do me a favor. One of my dear friends is a parishioner here. His name is Jack DeJoy. He's one of my very dear friends. And I would just like for everyone to hold a moment of silence and prayer for this good man who's been afflicted lately. So if you do that for me, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. You know, the great William Shakespeare said, "He who has no music has no soul." And we can see tonight that our young people has taught us that. The great Louis Armstrong said there's only 2 kinds of music, good and bad. Tonight we heard the good. So I thank you all. What young talents. And it's so important in trying times like we live in that we think about this. And music historically has a way. Music won't solve your problems, but it can be a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul, as the old Negro spirituals go. And historically, music in Washington has played a positive role. In 1838, about 3 years after the National Theater opened, blacks who had once been able to sit in the theater were forced to go to the alcove. This is very similar to 1797 when Richard Allen and Absalom Jones, the founder of the Black Baptist and Episcopal Church and Methodist Episcopal Church, were praying in downtown Philadelphia, and they had always been in the front, and a man came and tapped them on the shoulder and said, "You must leave," and they didn't. And he tapped him again. He said, "Leave me be. Once I leave, you will never have me worry about me again." And they went out and formed their own churches, the African Methodist Episcopal and Episcopal Church. 3 years after it opened, in 1873, some years after that, blacks started performing their own classical ensembles. And they founded black churches: Lincoln Temple Congregational Church, Asbury United Church, the Mount Zion formed in 1816, First Baptist here in Georgetown formed in 1862. And they started performing all over. One of their first teachers, music teachers in Washington, was a man named John Exposito. He was a former member of the Marine Band, and he had given John Philip Sousa music lessons. Yeah. And the group he helped found was something called the Colored American Opera Company. They performed in 1873 at something called Lincoln Hall. So there were all black opera companies there. The Fifth Jubilee Singers came to Washington in 1882. Of course, the Jubilee Singers founded at Fisk University, went on a European tour to raise money for the university, and they performed at the First Congregational Church downtown. And the pastor was named Jeremiah Rankin. And one of the founding members of that church was what we call the Christian General, O.O. Howard. And O.O. Howard, of course, as you know, was a founder of Howard University and the Freedmen's Bureau. And when the hotels wouldn't house them, the black community jumped in action and found places for them in people's homes. And then they found a place downtown at St. James Hotel. And then they performed in the Blue Room in the White House. And Chester Arthur, the president, said after they sang Steal Away, he told Rankin, "I've never in my life been so much moved." Music continued. James Trotter is the father of William Monroe Trotter, the great abolitionist, came to Washington to work in the Treasury Department. He was appointed the U.S. Recorder of Deeds, a position that later on Frederick Douglass had. He wrote a book called Music and Some Highly Musical People. The first book written, certainly the first black book, one of the first books written to document the music of a people. And Washington had other great leaders here. William Marion Cook and James Reese Europe were the prime founders of what we call great black music, especially. Now, William Marion Cook's, his father had been, was John Howell Cook, who was the founder of Howard's Law School. And he was born here, he went to Oberlin Conservatory at the age of 15. Money was raised for him to go to Oberlin by Frederick Douglass. Douglass was an amateur violinist himself. And he went to school in Berlin. And after he had formed an orchestra, but lacking any funds, he did not able to survive. But he later went to the National Conservatory of Music, and he studied with the great Czech composer, Antonín Dvořák. And of course, Dvořák created great music from the New World, and he incorporated Negro spirituals. And he associated with Harry Burleigh, who helped compose the song that we just heard so beautifully, Deep River. And Burleigh became, he was the baritone for that. And as Dvořák composed a song Going Home, he said, this Czech man said, "I am not satisfied that the future of music must be founded upon what are called Negro melodies. They are the folk songs of America. All great musicians have borrowed from the songs of the common people." You remember what Duke Ellington said? Good musicians borrow, great musicians steal. He took that from something that Picasso had told him about art. And these Negro melodies continue. All black music is founded upon these melodies. And then came Paul Laurence Dunbar, great poet, who came to Washington. And he worked on something, created something called the Origin of the Cakewalk. And he found someone. He found Cook, and he and Cook had no money. They went and borrowed some money, and they composed songs with no piano. And they put together a book called Collection of Negro Songs. And it was produced by Bert Williams. And we know Bert Williams was a vaudeville performer. And Cook was important to perhaps the greatest musician to come out of Washington, and one out of the world, probably Duke Ellington. And Duke Ellington, of course, grew up not far in Foggy Bottom. That was his first home. And Ellington saw Cook on a park bench in New York once. And he said, "Dad, I can't call him Dad. I can't figure this out. What should I do?" And Cook says, that first you find a logical way of things. And when you find it, avoid it. And let your inner self break through and guide you. Be innovative. And so many others came. Henry Lewis founded the Glee Club in 1892. Mamie Hyer and Georgia Goins founded the Treble Club. And the Treble Club was a club just of the black elite, mainly black elite of women. And they had salon type. As you know, the salon movement was very big in Washington. George Douglas Johnson had a place 1463 S Street, and where he was like the first reading clubs. And they housed these, but they were very elite people. And many were based at Howard University. And it's no way but Howard University, it was only until the 1960s that Howard allowed even jazz music, other forms of music. Howard at the time was a school for the classically trained. And they formed the Howard Choral Society. And it was founded by Lulu Childress, who became a friend of Marian Anderson. We'll get to Marian Anderson in a moment. And then there was Roy Tibbs, and he was an Oberlin trained pianist and directed the men's glee club. He married a woman named Lillian Evans. And who was Lillian Evans? Take the name Lillian Evans and you get Madame Avante. And Madame Avante was a woman who sang in Italian and German and French and became the first black opera singer invited to the White House. But she could not sing in public places in Washington. So what they did was got a barge and put it out in the Potomac right by the Watergate. And the barge was in the water, so you can't stop the person from integrating the water. They were in the water and they sang on the barge. And as you know, great singers, as we saw there, a great singer has such a voice that they can sing here and throw the voice, like the great Pachinari, like Dexter Gordon, like the great musicians, like Jug Owens. And they had this great, and she sang from the barge. And one of her great admirers was perhaps the greatest First Lady we've known, Eleanor Roosevelt. And she invited her to the White House to sing along with Metropolitan Opera. Then there were others. Joseph Douglas, violinist, the grandson of Frederick Douglass. And his father was Charles, also a violinist, but Charles had been the first person to found a baseball, black baseball, at the White Lot, which is right up in front of the White House. And he came and he also played at the what they call the New York Settlement House. Settlement houses like James Adams, some places like that, because the settlement houses also were discriminated. And until someone came in, a violinist named David Manns, and brought in gave black youth a chance to play. So many others. One of the most important was a man named Samuel Coleridge Taylor. Now, Samuel Coleridge Taylor was of Nigerian background, Afro-Brit, and composed songs. And he created something called the Song of Hiawatha. And he came to Washington in 1904 and performed at the Metropolitan A.M.E. Church. Metropolitan A.M.E. Church right downtown, 16th and L Street, Frederick Douglass' church. And he would bring Harriet Tubman and she would go to church there with him. He was a Pan-Africanist, which means he believed in the decolonization of Africa. And he came and sang with the Fisk Jubilee Singers. And W.B. Du Bois had heard his songs. And W.B. Du Bois, which many don't know, in 1900, and this is the greatest of our African-American intellectuals, wrote a pageant called The Song of Ethiopia and produced it in Washington, D.C., right at the old American League ball field. 14,000 people came, and Du Bois said, wonderfully, irresistibly, the dreams comes true, as he brought people. And he said, this pageant represents 10,000 years of the history of the Negro race, and his work and his suffering, and his triumphs in the world. After William Marion Cook, one of the greatest musicians to come out was a man named James Reese, born in Mobile, Alabama in 1800, comes to Washington a little later, goes to Dunbar High School. Said one person, he was born 15 years after the end of the Civil War, 7 years after the birth of W.C. Handy, and 1 year before Booker T. Washington began Tuskegee. And he lived in Southeast Washington. His father was a postal worker. He lived 300 Beach Street Southwest, only a couple of doors down from John Philip Sousa, who was the musical director of the Marine Corps. And Sousa would bring these young kids in and teach them, give them lessons throughout the week, he and his assistants. And he attended what was then called M Street School, which later became Dunbar High School, the preparatory high school of Washington. And of course, Dunbar has been the home of so many greats. Rayford Logan, the great Sterling Brown. Charles Drew invented blood plasma. And James Reese, like anyone who wanted to make their mark in those days, you don't stay in D.C. If you want to be a great musician, you don't stay. You have to leave and go to New York, and he left and went to New York. And he formed something called the Clef Clubs, which was the first big orchestra created by blacks, but it was also the first union. It became a union for members to organize themselves. The Clef Club, remember the Treble Clef Club, which was the women's group at Howard. You know, he took the name from that. And Du Bois said he has the organizational skills of Sousa. Sousa means because Sousa could organize big bands. He put together 125 musicians. They performed in Washington with the National Negro Symphony Orchestra and conducted with the music of Cook and also James Rosamond Johnson, who along with James Weldon Johnson wrote the Negro National Anthem, which we so beautifully heard. They performed the works of Dvorak, Tchaikovsky, Mendelssohn, and others. Europe also went on to perform with the Ziegfeld Follies. Some of you all know, may know, some may know, may not admit that you know, but that was a long time ago. And they also helped create something called a foxtrot. Now, whether you know how, I ask my kids, do you know how to dance? I don't think you know how to dance. But in the old days, everybody would learn how to dance, so you learned this foxtrot even if you didn't. And he did this. But in 1915 or so, as World War I began, and the government was so discriminatory, they didn't want blacks to fight for the rights to fight for their own freedom, James Reese Europe joined World War I. He created something called the 369th Regiment, which later became known as the Old 15, the Men of Bronze, what we call the Harlem Hellfighters. And the French called them the Enfants Perdus, the lost children. And he played that with Noble Sisters, the great. And they played with, and within this black unit, they served with men from the French colonies, from Morocco and other places like that. He was injured in battle, and the camp commander said, "Well, I want you not to go back to battle. I want you to form a band." And Europe resisted because his band hadn't practiced, but he put together a band mainly of blacks from Puerto Rico and New York and other places like that. And one day they're playing. They started playing, and the French look at them this way and that way, and then they don't get it. Now all of a sudden they get it. They played a jazzy version of the Marseillaise. And from then, jazz never left France. And he said, "You're 50,000 people at least." And he came. He said, "The music of our race springs from the soul. And this is true today as with no other race except possibly the Russians. And it is because of this that I and all of my musicians have come to love Russian melodies. Indeed, as far as I'm concerned, it is the only music I care for outside of Negro music." See, this is important because as the world is now, we know the bastardly things that Putin does. But Putin is not Russian culture. He's not the Russian people. Don't confuse it. He could be a distortion, just like we may have distortions. But it doesn't mean that you don't appreciate it. And if you listen to a New Orleans dirge, just listen to a funeral dirge. You listen to a dirge of Russian, and you see the same thing in the middle. It comes from the heart. And Europe saw that. And he formed this band. He said, "We colored people have our own music that is part of us. It is the product of our souls. It has been created by the sufferings and the miseries of our own race." He used music to better his race to fight in that war. And the regiment came back, fought in 191 combat units, didn't lose a soul. They won the Croix de Guerre, the highest medal that the French can honor. They come back and they get a parade up and down Fifth Avenue. But the blacks who performed in Washington, D.C. are not allowed. Not only are not allowed to march, they are allowed to wear the uniforms. And as blacks come back to Washington, D.C., we know what happens in 1919. Not written about it, we talk about other places. They came in 1919, they were race riots in 25 or more cities of people in their Klan uniforms attacking black soldiers in their military uniforms. And hundreds were killed in the race riots of 1919. Washington, D.C. also had one of the great events in modern cultural history. That's 1939 when Marian Anderson, the contralto officer, came and she had been invited to sing at the Daughters of America at Constitution Hall. But Constitution Hall has bylaws that says blacks cannot perform there. So blacks got in action. Dr. Wilkerson, who teaches at Howard, he's a member of the Communist Party. Others become very active. They formed something called the Marian Anderson Committee. They can't sing Constitution Hall, so they tried to reserve Central High School, which is now Pedosa. But at the time, Cardozo was a white school, and so they could not perform there, right over by the 11th and New Street. And so a committee is formed with Dr. Wilkinson. And who is his biggest supporter? Mrs. Roosevelt. And Mrs. Roosevelt resigned her DAR membership, and she enlisted Harold Nichols, who was the Secretary of the Treasury at the time. And the Secretary of the Treasury ran all local lands. You see, he could determine what happened in the federal lands, not the D.C. land. So on April 9, 1939, a concert was held at the Lincoln Memorial, the first big concert there, and 75,000 people came there, black and white. It never happened, perhaps not in America. And it was piped in to hundreds of thousands on the radio. And she sang, "Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows but Jesus." Gospel training. And they sang Ave Maria, and they sang America, and they broadcast it throughout the world in Canada. And it had a big impact on the world. So big that Mrs. Roosevelt started a radio show where she played these songs. And a few weeks later, Miss Anderson is allowed to perform at the White House. Miss Anderson trained at the Curtis School of Music in Philadelphia. That same April, Billie Holiday sang Strange Fruit, which we just heard. And Strange Fruit was a song written by a man named Abel Miracle, who was a radical. He was a school teacher. He wrote this song. Do you know that he's the one who adopted the children of Ethel and Julius Rosenberg when they were killed? And a wonderful man. And he wrote that song when she performed at Cafe Society, and you could hear a pin drop. And she wanted to sing it here, and she wanted to come sooner to sing it here, but some of the clubs wouldn't allow her. And as you know, the great Woody Shaw, the great clarinetist, played with her. But she did come to Washington, and she sang it at the Howard Theater. That same year, the great Paul Robeson, perhaps the greatest all-around human being this country's produced. I don't know anyone great all-American. Football All-American, bass baritone, lawyer, consul, civil rights lawyer, great singer, acting in Othello more than anyone in history. And they denied him the right to sing at Constitution Hall. So he performed at the Uline Arena on 30 North Street Northeast. And then, of course, in the midst of this comes Duke Ellington, going not far away. And his father was a chauffeur, and he worked for a congressman, things like that, not a wealthy man. But Ellington said he raised his family as if he were a millionaire, which meant he put everything into his family. Worked 2 jobs. The mother didn't work. And his father told him something simple, that you always represent your race. Everywhere you go, you represent your race. You know, some of us are old enough to remember how my grandmother raised me. You always represent yourself. And the first thing you always do is you always, no matter what, you always put on clean underwear. Because if you have to go to the hospital or something, you don't want people to talk about you. Some of you are old enough to remember that too. And some of you are young enough to remember too. I told my kids the same thing. And Ellington attended Garnett Junior High School, Garnett High School downtown. And he went to Armstrong High School. Remember, most people went to Dunbar. He went to Armstrong because it was a technical school. And he wanted to learn sign painting. And he was a sign painter and painted buildings like that. But on the side, he had his orchestra. And he played at the old True Reformers building. The True Reformers building had a gym, and they would play basketball. The Washington team formed at Howard. And then at around 11 o'clock, they would take the stands out and have an orchestra. And everybody said, you know, I want to be an athlete. But as I'm playing, excuse me if I say excuse me, as I'm playing, all the pretty girls are listening to the musicians, not the athletes. So I put down the basketball, and I've never been since then. Ellington said this, not me, Ellington. He won an NAACP poster contest, and went off to New York. And as they say, the rest is history. Ellington was a friend of Rayford Logan, who was a great professor at Howard University. He wrote a book called The Diplomatic Relations with Haiti. And he taught him a lot about what's happening in Haiti. And Ellington owned a library of books, 800 books, which is a lot for a person at that time. He listened to the poems of Langston Hughes. He read the works of W. B. Du Bois. He looked at the art of Jacob Lawrence doing the Works Project Administration. he became friends with a man named Benjamin Davis, who ran as a radical on the communist ticket in the 1930s, even though Ellington was a devout anti-communist. But he said he admired anybody who fought racism. And in 1943, he composed one of his greatest works called Black Bound in Beige, a tone parody to the Negro. And is influenced by the blacks who had fought at the Battle of Savannah during the Haitian Revolution. I have gone back to the history of my race and tried to express it through rhythm. And at this great concert was Count Basie, Benny Goodman, Marion Anderson, Langston Hughes, Elaine Locke, Eleanor Roosevelt, Leopold Stokowski, and so many others. And Frank Sinatra was across town and snuck all the way over to come and hear this great concert. And the money was raised for Russian war relief because the Russians had sacrificed more than anybody during the war. Millions of people. And Ellington and others knew that sacrifice. We've had wars, but we've been forced not to have wars on our land like that. He early on found this one word person said, this black is beautiful, even though he did not proclaim that. But he said he wrote in 1928, Black Beauty, 1920, 35, Symphony in Black, 1943, Black Bound in Beige, 1947, Liberian Suite, 1963, My People, that's the year of the March on Washington, and so many others. And he said, the music of my race is more than an American idiom. It is the result of our transplantation to American soul. What we could not openly express in words, we could express in music. And he did that. In 1960, Ellington was very close to his parents. In 1960, they were buried at Harmony House Cemetery out in the Northeast. He was very close to his parents, but one day he gets word that all the graves are being dug up. And these are graves of many great black leaders in Washington. And he finds out that they're being dug up, and he gets 2 days to do something about it. So he was able to get down to Washington. And people like other people, Elizabeth Keckley, who was, as you know, who was Lincoln's seamstress you saw in the picture of Lincoln. And he was able to get the money, and then he transported them to Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx. But after that, he developed a distaste for the city that he loved so much. He was never invited to the White House by Kennedy, but he was by Johnson many times. On March 1968, a few days after King was assassinated, he performed for the Liberian president, William Tubman, along with the National Guard Armory. And Mayor Walter Washington, who was the mayor at the time, gave him a medal, and the president later gave him a Presidential Award of Freedom. In 1999, up at the National Cathedral on his 100th birthday, his premier suite, the Concert of Sacred Music, was performed. My kids went to school up there. Dean Baxter, who was the dean of the cathedral, called me in and said, Jackson, he says, I want to commission the work of Duke Ellington. I would like you to help me. I said, man, save your money and let's do this commission of works that Duke Ellington has produced, his sacred songs he's produced there. Two of the greatest people to come out of Washington in study of music were two Turkish men, Ahmet and Nesri Erdogan. You all know them because they founded the Atlantic Records. They were born in Turkey, but they lived in England because their father was the first ambassador under the Ataturk democratic elected government in Turkey. And they had heard Ella Fitzgerald and others at the Royal Theatre in London. And they came here and they started going to concerts. They were first at St. Albans and they went to London. They were St. Albans, but you know, in St. Albans you had to go to chapel every day, and the father was Muslim, so he didn't particularly, so he sent him up to London. And then they started going out at night, these young boys, 15 so, and the father, because he's devout Muslim, so he didn't drink. And so he told the chauffeur named Cleo Payne, don't take my boys out to these clubs like this at night, they sneak out. Let them come in and hear the music at the embassy. So what they did was start bringing jazz musicians to the embassy, Turkish embassy up on Massachusetts Avenue right there. And they brought the great ones, Louis Armstrong, and Johnny Hodges, and Benny Carter, and Lester Young, Meatloaf Lewis. And Ellington said we jammed, until the wee hours of the night. And then he said this. He said, all submitting Church America's goodwill. But he said, but I can't write about that without the approval of the Department of State. And you think about yesterday and today, and you think about what Ellington said. And they started having concerts in this embassy. And once a Southern Senator Congress came out in Massachusetts Avenue, a big, beautiful house there. It was founded by the man who founded Bottle Cap, so it was worth, it was a multi-millionaire. And the senator, I suppose it may have been Stennis or one of them said, I'm sorry, Ambassador, you can't be bringing these black people in the front door of Massachusetts Avenue. And the ambassador listened. Some of you all will know, I grew up, so I know the Bible. I grew up knowing the Bible, and I remember this verse. I teach in the East, so I know the Quran. But he said, my grandmother had a saying, in my father's house there are many mansions. If it were not so, I would not have told you. And he didn't say these exact words, but he said, in my house, my mansion, we follow my rules. And everybody will come through the front door. But you, Mr. Bigot, if you want to come through the back door, you may. And from then on, all these, the secretary of the Smithsonian, a dear friend, Lonnie Bunch, and he said, he often told me that when he first came to Washington to go to Howard, that his mother said to him, if they have another ride like that in 68, just run to the Turkish embassy, because they had the embassy. And they formed another concert. Now the second big concert they had was the first public integrated concert in Washington, D.C. It was held at 16th and R Street Northwest. What is that 16th and R Street? The Jewish Community Center. So here, these two Muslim boys bring black music to a Jewish community center. Unheard of at the time. I wish that we had such unity today. Huddy Ledbetter came. He performed at an Erdogan concert. And he was to stay with the Alan Lomax, the great musicologist. And Lomax had a house downtown. But as the great Ledbetter comes in, and the owner of the apartment sees him and says, no, you can't bring that Negro in here. Notice I say Negro. I never say the other word, but I say it. And he said, this is the word. And Lomax didn't have the guts to insist. And so Ledbetter wrote a song, Bourgeois Blues. Me and my wife went all over town, and everywhere we went, people turned us down. Lord, in a bourgeois town. Tell all the colored folks to listen to me. Don't try to find no home in Washington, D.C., because it's a bourgeois town. Now, Ledbetter was not just speaking of whites and blacks. He was speaking about the upper tens, that's what we call them. The upper tens, the light skin, because Washington also discriminated against poor blacks based on the caste and color lines. I can tell you many stories. And Erdogan also got to know another man, a Creole named Jelly Roll Morton, Ferdinand de Mint, who also came to Washington when he was down on his luck. And Jelly Roll Morton was in to perform at the Library of Congress. He said, he wrote a poem to his wife. Darling wife, I don't want you to worry. Things are tough everywhere. We are not the only ones that's catching hell. And he's speaking about the conditions of blacks there. And so there were so many events here in Washington. The All Souls Church, right up at 16th and Harvard. And as you know, that was the church of John Quincy Adams, the great abolitionist president, who defended the people on the Amistad, a ship that had escaped in 1848. And music went there. And one of the first concerts, one of the great concerts there was with Stan Getz and with Charlie Bird from Washington, D.C. and Keita Best, the great Keita Best, who played with Ella Fitzgerald. And they had the first concert of Brazilian music in the United States. And Willis Conover helped produce, and as of course you know, Willis Conover had the Voice of America. And there were so many expressions of music. At Howard University, sometimes this music wasn't allowed. And a man named Sterling Brown stepped in. And Sterling Brown wrote the song, Strong Men Keep Going Stronger. And he taught people like the great poet, A.B. Spelman, another great poet, my dear friend, Namir Baraka. and he taught them and they could listen to the music. And he brought them, and later on, Donald Byrd began to found the record jazz studies. Some of you all know Benny Golson, who just died, Killer Joe, he wrote. And Benny Golson wrote about when he was at Howard, you weren't allowed to play music, jazz music, therefore he left and went off with Maurice Jackson. And then there were other places in Washington that you'd be surprised with music. And one of the great jazz music, one of the places where jazz really hit it was Lord & Prison. And you know Lord & Prison out there. And when I first came to Georgetown, in graduate school, then we would go out to Lord and teach. It was just, it was me and the guys in maximum security. If you're going to teach in prison, if you want to do it, I always teach in maximum security because they have nothing to do but study. And they do what you tell them to do. I never had a problem. Never once. Over here, I could have problems. Except sometimes people, I have some of my colleagues, they don't like teach athletes. I really do like teach athletes because they do what you tell them to do. They may not do it as well, they may not put enough time, but they will come to class and do, and that's all I can ask. It's my class you would do if you want to do well. And so anyway, Lord & Prison. Now, it was a program started, Lord & Prison, by the chaplain there. And he created this program. And Lord had been the federal prison. And who was at Lord over time? Alice Paul, the suffragette. Laura Houghton, the Nazi agent. Go-Go legend, Chuck Brown. Petey Green, if you all know a little history. Petey Waldo, the great Petey Green. Norman Mailer. And G. Gordon Liddy. So it's good, And at the same time they have these concerts, they have in Carterbury. And Carterbury is owned by the federal government. So both these places are owned by the federal government. So bear with me just a second. So Lord & Prison began in 1956, organized by the Dominican priest Carl J. Breakfellow. And he organized his first concert with Sarah Vaughan, Louis Armstrong, the All-Stars, and the great Jack Teagarden on trombone. And Satchmo, as you know, learned to play his music in a war song. And a war song, it was a Konofsky family. And remember, he wore a cross of a Star of David on his neck. If you read the book of John Thompson, we won't talk about sports much today, but he writes about the Orloff family, the Jewish family, Marty, and her husband who took him in. And so Armstrong always wore that cross of David, and he talks about that. Anyway, Armstrong plays in 56. In 57, Little Rock. And remember Little Rock, the little girls, you see them trying to go to school, Ernie Green and others, and you see these nicely carved whites throwing eggs and throwing things at these girls. You remember the Norman Rockwell painting, and I called President Eisenhower calls Satchmo and said, Satchmo, I want you to go to Russia. I said, why do you want me to go? He said, because I want you to tell the Russians that we aren't like that. And of course, this was during the time of Sputnik, and the space race. And so Satchmo said, no, I don't think I want to go. And so he called him again. And, I'm in the church, so I can't say what he said. But he said a couple of things. He said, tell the MF I'm not going. Now, if you know anything about Satchmo, and I'm not saying you do it, but Satchmo had 2 joints every morning. Nobody bothered. That's Satchmo. That's Louis Armstrong. Don't do it. But that's Satchmo. He never said to me, but I was just Satchmo. And I guess he had hit his 2 joints, and when the man called him, he says, I'm not going. But if you integrate this place, Daddy, bring me along. And do you know within a week or 2, Eisenhower was sending troops to Little Rock and integrated the city. Now at the same time, same year, Washington, D.C. is officially desegregated, 1957. Federal government buildings are officially desegregated. D.C. is still a very segregated town. D.C. is more segregated now than when I came here 40-some years ago. Schools are more segregated now than when I came here. I know, I can tell you, I have the figures. Neighborhoods are more segregated. How can it be? Well, we can talk about that another time. So anyway, all these things happening, Louis came. Now, as he and others go to Lorton, who else comes to Lorton? A man we know is Old Blue Eyes. And, there are many great singers. But you start with Ella Fitzgerald, No Blue Eyes. And if you think you can sing, what you do is you go in the shower and you try to hold a tune. And try to hold a tune with those two and Louis Armstrong. Y'all had perfect pitch. I never thought Louis Armstrong could sing, and then I tried it. So then you had that, they brought this music, and Louis Armstrong, and when Sinatra comes, Arthur Cronquist comes and chronicles the event in Lord, and he says, "Oh, Blue Eyes could be any way he wants to be at this time," but that he chose to. Now, this is during the time that Frank Sinatra is rather liberal. You know, he helps integrate Las Vegas when they don't like Sammy Davis. Maybe he changed later on with Baby Bourgeois and some others. Anyway, not far from there, you have the Carter Barony, which is also owned by the federal government, up the Gold Coast, where where in many cases the well-off blacks were living. The Carter Barony on 30 acres of land and 1,754 acres, authorized as one of the nation's places. And there at the Carter Barony, you would have these same musicians who would go. Ella Fitzgerald would leave, Lord, and come there. And you had these, they were free concerts, 4,000 folding seats. When I first came to Washington, we go all the time to get the great musicians there. The Lord concert, black and white men and women integrated, more than they ever did in Washington society. They in prison, they have to. And the concerts, Ellington's, 1,000 at the Lord, and the next day 1,000 at the Carter Barony. Then came the assassination of Martin Luther King in 1968. 13,000 federal troops brought to the city, 7,600 people arrested, mostly black. 12 were killed, mainly by smoke inhalation. And that same year, the concerts, the Carter Barony still brought people in. They brought in Herbie Mann Quintet, Charlie Bird Trio, and they brought in Keita Betts, who played with the Ella Fitzgerald, and so many others. And there also they brought in a woman who made Washington home, Roberta Flack. As you know, she used to sing at Mr. Henry's up there. But something happened after 1968 in the riots, and many whites and upper class blacks no longer felt comfortable, they said, to go to the Carter Barony and even come to Washington. This is around the time, as you know, when the Wolf Trap and these places opened, they opened right around the time after the riot. And jazz music loses its way. And those two places, Lawton now is a fancy development. The Carter Barony, I live now from the Carter Barony, it is a shambles, what the federal government is allowed to happen. The 4,000 seats are rotten. You know, the neighbors are trying to say they want to raise money, but they don't have that kind of money. Nobody's going to give it. You know, Bezos is not going to give it to you. He give it to. Have anybody ever seen Bezos' house over on that street? You know, it's big. I'm sorry for it, but it's as big as the church here. It's immaculate. And so you have the places that the federal government used to play a role in funding, and now it does. I'm not saying you fund the prison, but those places. And then you have other things. The Bohemian Cavern, which has been open for years, which was one of the premier jazz clubs in the country, in 2016 closed. Why did it close? Gentrification, landscape. They could not pay the rent. Omar Brown, the great brother, ran it, but he couldn't more. And the great pianist Jason Moran, who heads jazz at the Kennedy Center, says that what happens to all of that energy? Who picks up the steam when these places are lost? And then a year later, Twins, which is up at 14th and near 14th and U. They used to have a place uptown near where I live. It closed, the victim of gentrification. And little is taking its place. Some community groups have tried. There's something called a Home Rule Festival. It opens up at Walter Reed, at the old site of the old Walter Reed Army Hospital. Another group called Capital Bach, which is a modern group which has brought together everything from hip-hoppers and others, and they brought together Avant Jazz and do a wonderful job. But we're losing those spaces. And lastly, just a little bit about music and society today. The 23rd Amendment to the Constitution was ratified in 1961. It allowed residents of Washington to vote for the first time. And Billy Taylor, the great Washingtonian, went to Dunbar High School, wrote a song. I wish that I knew how I would feel to be free. I wish that I knew how I would feel to be free. And he said the lyrics were about freedom. And it was one of Dr. King's favorite songs. Dr. King didn't, he wrote about jail. He could never remember the song. So they asked Billy Taylor, he said, Billy, play that Baptist sounding song. And then you had so many other Washingtons. Marvin Gaye, the great Marvin Gaye. And he wrote the greatest protest song ever, What's Going On? And some of you all know, even if you don't have to be, people say, well, Jack, I don't know that. So I wasn't living then. I said, I wasn't living when Beethoven was playing, but I know it. I wasn't living when Lincoln was there, but I know the Emancipation Proclamation. So young people, you can. And so he created something called the Inner City Blues. Make me want to holler. Rockets, moonshots, spin me on the have-nots. And he said, what matters was that I had something to say. In November of 1973, the great Bernice Johnson Reagan, founder of the Student Coordinating, Nonviolent Coordinating Committee's Freedom Singers, Freedom Singers, acapella group Sweet Honey in Iraq was founded. She was a graduate school at Howard, and Nixon had just signed the Self-Government Reorganization Act, the Home Rule Act, signed by the President and Congress, cannot be easily overturned, and by the new Congress. And she founded this group, Sweet Honey in Iraq, shortly after. And the words come from, but you would be fed with the finest of wheat, with honey from the rock. I would satisfy you. And they took this name. And this group started performing all over the world, performing against racism, sexism, homophobia, domestic violence, protesting, and trying to do something about the AIDS crisis, wage inequality. They'd be fighting today to keep USAID. I just say this. This thing about USAID. Do you know if USAID is not funded, 10,000 people die every day in the Sudanese villages? Do you know if certain things pass, people who are transgender, who make a decision or who are on medication, they would take and put them, if a person wants to transition to be a woman, and put them in a cell with men, and they would be beaten and treated miserably. Cruelty should never, and Sweet Honey in Iraq and others would be speaking against this cruelty. They performed when Nelson Mandela came. They performed at the National Cathedral when Steve Biko came and sang We Should Not Be Moved. In 2014, after the shooting death of Michael Brown, a white police officer in Ferguson, Missouri, and Bernice Reagan substituted the song, the line, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, ain't gonna let no Ferguson turn me around. Today, 50 years afterwards, the Home Rule Act may be undersold. And when it was first inaugurated, Sweet Honey wrote a song dedicated to Ella Baker. We who believe in freedom shall not rest. We who believe in freedom shall not rest until it comes. The last concert Duke Ellington had was at Georgetown University in 1974, February 10th, about 56 years ago. He played his first song there. And Duke Ellington's now his horn, his 2,000 compositions in the Smithsonian. Smithsonian headed by a black man, Dr. Lonnie Bunch. And Ellington also there's his Congressional Medal of Honor. Dear Scott Herring, who once taught at UDC at Federal City College, wrote many songs. And one of his songs was a song called H2O Blues, Watergate Blues. You know why he wrote it. And he said, instead of just glossing over the problem, he wanted to sing about a larger thing, the plight of the impoverished Washingtonians. He wanted to use his music to help the people. On his last album, it was called Moving Target. The words went, it was about Washington, D.C. It had a verse. It is a massive irony for all the world to see. It's the nation's capital. It's Washington, D.C. Thank you. I'm a big kid. I can take it. So, as I tell my students, I can care less if one agreed, disagreed with. I'll never say you're wrong. And then she told me Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln were born to the same mother. It was obviously wrong. So, we can just mingle. It's up to you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I will. And you know, I sign books all night, so. Thank you for having me.
Make sure you go buy the book, Rhythms of Resilience. And also, once again, please come to church this Sunday, where you will hear a special guest sing. So that would be the 9 a.m. service and the 11:30. That would be Miss Layla Rochelle Bunch. So she'll be performing among 1,400 parishioners. So if you enjoyed today, she will have some more for you on Sunday. So thank you, and please support Duke Ellington